So if you have a G0752 or similar Grizzly lathe, you may have scratched your head trying to figure out what all this means when it comes to threading. I know it's been really hard for me to understand. I think the manual, this is printed out of the manual, and this chart itself appears on the front of the lathe, and it's been very confusing to me. I haven't been able to figure it out until just yesterday, and I just stared at it and thought, and in fact I emailed Grizzly, but then of course after I emailed them it occurred to me what the deal was, and I just for a long time didn't understand how to set this thing up for threading a specific pitch of thread. Now there are two charts on the front of the lathe, one that looks like this, and this is for standard threads, and then there's another one that's just a tiny bit different, that's for metric threads, and I'll explain what the difference is between them. Here's a picture of the front of the headstock, and these two dials change the gears in the transmission inside the headstock. Over here we have the quick change gears, and these you change by hand. You just take these bolts off the end, pull the gears off, and put whichever gears are appropriate for the thread that you want to cut. And that's sort of where the confusion comes in. So let's say I want to cut, and this is what the manual talks about, 64 tooth gear, or 64 tooth per inch, or 64 thread per inch. I was thinking T in tooth, but 64 threads per inch. It's pretty clear. You come over and you set this dial here to the uppercase C. These are all uppercase, ABC, Roman numeral 1, 2, 3. You have to set a combination of these and a combination of these gears to give you the correct ratio between the lead screw and the spindle. And what that does is it moves the tool across the workpiece at a certain ratio, or at a certain speed per turn of the spindle. That's what determines how many threads per inch you get when you're threading. And so again, a combination of these two gears, or these two gear knobs, and how you have these set up determine that ratio. The ratio between lead screw rotation and spindle rotation, which essentially determines how fast the tool moves across the workpiece per turn of the workpiece. That's what you need to set up to get any particular thread per inch thread. So I want 64, let's say. So I set this to C, that's the uppercase C, this capital B, capital A, capital C. Those are the settings for this dial. So that's my row. I'm in this column, so I go up to the top, and here it tells you which Roman numeral to choose. So it's Roman numeral 1. So the question then is, how do I set those gears up? That first part's easy. Off to this side, give me a C. Up to the top, give me an I, or Roman numeral 1. But what does all this mean, and how do I know what gears to pick? Well, these top two gears are plastic, 40 and 60 teeth, respectively, for the top and the next one down. And I don't think you ever change those. And then these two big ones here are 120 and 127. Now those, if you look at the metric chart, those are the same. 40, 60, and then 120 and 127. Almost the same size, these two big guys. And then you got this A, which points to that gear right there, and this B, which points to this gear down here. The only difference between these two charts, between standard and metric, is that the B is moved over. There's a little spacer right here. So this B gear is off toward the right, closer to the headstock, just like in this picture. For metric, you swap this gear and this spacer, so the spacer is closer to the headstock, and this gear meshes with this 120 tooth gear instead of the 127. That's what you do for metric rather than standard. Alright, that's one thing I figured out between the two, standard and metric. This B gear moves over here or over here, depending on what you're doing. But I looked through all the gears, Didn't find any gears with an A or a B on them, and that's where I was confused. Again, 24 tooth, I set this to A, go up and set this to Roman numeral 2. What if I want a 40 or thread per inch? I said teeth, I think, again. What if I want 40 threads per inch? 2 and lowercase b. This is where I was confused. Maybe you are laughing at me right now saying, this guy's not too bright. Maybe so, but maybe there's someone else there that's going to get this machine. Hopefully this will help them get to it a little bit quicker, even if you'd figure it out maybe quicker than I did. So I thought, oh, what about a 40 thread per inch? Well, I set this to 2, and what's this lowercase b? Where do I set that? And the book also points over here. Anyway, this was just confusing to me, and it didn't tell me where to set this one. Alright, so let me explain the deal. Let me cover this up. Ignore those first 2 rows. These are your threads per inch. The top 2 rows are something different. So when you want your threads per inch, choose from among only these bottom 3 rows where you got the uppercase A, B, C. That tells you how to set this. So you go left to figure out that, go up to the top row to figure out this. Well, what's left? What's left is these gears. Gear A and gear B. You need to figure out how many teeth those have. Alright? These top 2 rows, that's what those are. So these are not threads per inch, only the bottom 3 rows. So never pick from the top 2 when you're looking at how many threads per inch you want to do. So if I want 10 threads per inch, I go left and I set this to B. 10 threads per inch. I go up to the top, set this to the Roman numeral 1. But I also look in these first 2 rows. These are the number of teeth on gear A and gear B. So gear A, and in the PDF, there's an arrow from this A pointing to this gear. So that's this gear right here. So what did I say? How many teeth was I doing? 10 teeth. B, Roman numeral 1, but also gear A, 36 teeth. So this gear, I need to put a little 36 tooth gear on there. Gear B, that's this gear, is 40 teeth per inch, and I'm doing standard, so it'll stay here on the inside toward the headstock. It's pretty much as simple as that. If I'm doing metric, this B gear, the number of teeth, would be this gear, but the spacer would go over here, the gear would go on the left. And the diagram here that's on the metric chart will show that this gear is moved over to the left, meshing with the 120. So for standard, the 120 isn't even used. For metric, the B meshes with the 120. So for metric, the 120 gets used. So that's it. It's as simple as that. I probably shouldn't have been confused by it, but I was. So pick your thread in the bottom row. Pick your ABC for this dial by going over to the left column. Go to the top row to get the setting for this left gear change knob. And then, let's say for 24 teeth per inch, that'd be A for this, 2 for this, and then the top 2 rows specify 36 teeth for this A gear, 40 teeth for this B gear right here. And that's it. If that was confusing to you initially, hopefully this helps a little bit and maybe saves you a few minutes figuring out how to set up your Grizzly lathe to cut threads.